Hello, my friends, and welcome to a space where pleasure is treasured, relaxation is not what you think it is, and life firing on all cylinders is what we're about. If you are somebody who wakes up every day asking for way more, consider this your happy place. Welcome to the Creation of Living podcast. I'm your host, Heather Nichols. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Creation of Living podcast. So I have been doing a little bit of I am going to be doing a little bit of a series. Sometimes I like to do multiple conversations around a particular topic over time. And last week we did some stuff around XMen and creation. And I want to keep going with this topic of XMen and explore relationships and family and the one area that is so challenging for so many people. So first of all, if you're new to this podcast or this conversation and you're like, what the hell is an XMen? And XMen is a term, it's a specialty area in access consciousness that is about basically being different, functioning in a different way, seeing the world in a different way, neurodiversity, and having a different brain capacity and a different brain function that's more about having like spherical awareness and having a nonlinear way of functioning. A lot of XMen, we also use the word humanoid in access consciousness, which really is just like the seekers of the world, the people that are different, the people that are asking for different, see things different, don't function the way that other people function. And humanoid and XMen is kind of a spectrum, I would say. And a lot of times, one of the things about XMen is that, for XMen, judgment is something that doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's not something that XMen are inherently capable of doing. Now, the thing is that the world is created by judgment. Relationships are created by judgment. And I don't, when I say judgment, I mean all kinds of judgment. I don't just mean like the judgment that we think of when we think of judgment, which is like judging somebody, like thinking poorly of them or whatever. Judgment is, yes, it includes that. And it's also like, this is how it should be. This is how you are. This is the appropriate way. This is the right way. This is the way that marriage looks. This is the way that parenting looks. This is the way that any sort of relationship looks. It's like, you just, there's a lot of conclusions, decisions, judgments, computations, fixed points of view about how all of those things need to look and how you need to function within those relationships. And XMen don't know how to do that. Judgment doesn't make sense. It's more the pragmatics and it's more the energetics of things that make sense. That's not how the world is set up. Unfortunately, the world does not function in a pragmatic way. It would be a lot easier if it did. And we're changing that, So it's cool to talk about XMen in this context of various areas of life, because XMen have such a different reality with all of it. I started yesterday. I'm recording this the day before it goes out, so you may see it 5 years from now. But I started a class, a 3-part telecall called Out of the Box. And to me, it's kind of a very XMen-esque way of having a conversation, and looking at being out of the box with everything, And the way I chose to do it's a 3-part call. The way I chose to do it was to dive into first being out of the box with relationships. And then today we talked about business creation and money. And then tomorrow we're going to talk about bodies. And I was so glad that we started with relationships, because relationships really are kind of the linchpin for so many people. It's like we hold ourselves back, we change who we are, we change how we show up in the world based on our relationships, based on how people are going to respond, how it's going to upset somebody's world or not. We're always checking in with other people before we even act, before we do anything, before we choose anything. And that is really, it's a very interesting way of functioning. And it's a real capacity that X-Men tend to use against themselves. Um, so X-Men have this way of being able to really perceive exactly how something is going to land in somebody's world before it even happens, like 5 years in advance, you know? I mean, it's like we just know, like, this is how this is going to land in this person's world. And, and I know what I learned to do is I learned to see what was going to occur, how my actions or how I was being or who I was being or whatever was going to land in somebody's world before I even chose it, assess the energy of it, bring it back to myself, and change how I was showing up based on that so that I wouldn't receive the judgment, the discomfort, the projections, the rejection, the separation that that person would do with me if I chose what I was looking at choosing. And for X-Men, this is all in a split second. It's so fast how it occurs. So we do this, and this is just one thing. This is just kind of one of my experiences. There's so many different ways that this shows up based on, just different people. But we do these types of kind of energetic gymnastics, I would say, with our coworkers, with our boss, with our clients, with our parents, children, spouses, partners, friends, peers, colleagues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we're constantly making little tweaks or big ones in how we show up, who we are, how we function in the world, that are just a constant diminishment of us, And for X-Men, for humanoids, it's like we'd almost kind of rather diminish ourselves and make it just easier because we can kind of handle anything than to upset somebody else's reality. So in this out of the box class, we were looking at this, and it's like, how many people do you use to stop the choices you can make, to, put the brakes on the choices you can make, to withhold like how much do you want to create? How much do you want to generate? What would you like your business to look like? How much money would you like to have? How much ease would you like to have in your life? And so many of us actually have the capability of creating that kind of money, ease, business, creation, body, health, all these things, relationships. But we get so busy energetically with the worlds of other people that we stop ourselves. We don't have a clarity of what's true for us because we're so kind of like enmeshed in other people's realities and identifying with other people's realities. The thing about that is that it's actually a capacity. So X-Men have this capacity. They don't actually know how to do separation. Separation meaning like, I am an individual and separate from you. It's like they function naturally from communion. X-Men function naturally from communion. It gets very bastardized and very tweaked and twisted along the way because there's nobody encouraging us to do that. There's not a conversation in the world about that. Like, it's a very lonely road to actually function from communion, which is kind of funny. It's not really true, but that's the point of view, is like, if I function from the oneness and the communion that I am, I'm not going to, like, I'm somehow not going to be able to relate to people, which is hilarious, ironic, right? But somehow we have this whole universe where, like, it's like we don't do separation from the earth, from other people, from anything. And that can kind of get you in trouble in a world that functions from separation. So when other people start to separate from you, it's so bizarre. It feels so strange. It can feel kind of like a little violent to our systems. It can just have this real sense of like, be so confusing because you just don't understand how that could be, how somebody could separate, how somebody could judge, how they could reject, how they could have any sort of points of view, because inherently X-Men don't really have a lot of points of view. We learn to take on points of view, and we also perceive lots of points of view, judgments, conclusions, computations of other people very dynamically, and then we just make it ours. We think that just because we're aware of it, we think it's true for us, and it's not. So the X-Men of the world have a capacity to function in a really different way in everything. And I would love to see so much more of that in the world. There's a level of freedom that shows up for us that we gift ourselves when we are willing to be the X-Men in the world that we actually are. And that freedom it runs through everything. So let's look a little bit more in relationships now. So, we've talked about how we make these adjustments to how we show up based on other people. We adjust what we choose, what we create, how much we have, how little we have. It's all like this constant kind of like computing of like, where is this going to fit? Where am I going to fit? How is this going to keep me in the definitions that I need to have of myself? And so to go out of the box, to function from a very different space and a different way of being as an X-Men with other people, it requires a lot of courage, because most of the time as an X-Men, if you're really looking at like, I want to be free to be me. This is really what this is about, is like, I'd like to be free to be me and to have a different, have a sense of relaxation with myself in the world, where I'm not spending so much energy like censoring me and inhibiting me and changing me and adjusting me. Like, we take all of our creative energy and we use so much of it to adjust ourselves rather than just be ourselves. When you just have the freedom to be you and show up how you show up in your own unique way, there's so much energy that becomes available to create. But we hold ourselves back because of all these things that we're aware of and all these people that we're aware of. And one of the things specifically about relationships is that we tend to show up in such a way that, when you're in a relationship with somebody, whatever it looks like, it's like you really kind of meld into their universe of, what they think it needs to look like, how they think things need to go, how they need you to be. And X-Men are very resilient creatures, even though we're also kind of very sensitive in a lot of ways. So that resilience becomes something that we start to use against ourselves. And it's like, well, I don't really need to have these things. I don't really need to be this way. I don't really need to be that free. If it means that this person will have an easier life, or if it means that this person won't be upset with me, if it means that my relationship with them will just not be too rocky or whatever, I can just give me up, no problem. It's easier, Anybody relate to that? It's like, it's just easier to give myself up for others because I can and I will, no problem. I have done that so many times. And how do you show up as you, not giving yourself up in relationship with other people? And a lot of times you're going to have to be the one who's kind of leading in a lot of ways, like the culture of your relationship, whatever that is, whether it's a work relationship or maybe it's kind of like the culture of your workplace. But it could even be just a relationship. It could be with your boss. It could be with a coworker. It could be with, clients again. But you start to have your own back in knowing what's true for you. Okay, it doesn't work to give myself up. It doesn't work to always defer to this person's reality. There's things that I know, that I would like to have, that I would like to ask for, that I would like to see, that I would like to choose. And instead of putting yourself at odds with that person, it's like you can start to look from a different point of view. And you can also be asking, what points of view does this person have that I could use in a creative way? Because you can always, include other people's points of view without making them real or relevant to you. But if you just know somebody has a point of view and it's very, like they really believe in it, lock, stock, and barrel, they're like, this is truth, How many people are there? Like, so many people like that in the world that are like, this is how it is. This is how it goes, And there's no room, there's no flexibility. You don't have to fight that. You can look at that and go, okay, cool. So this person has this point of view. Now, if I'm willing to be anything, create anything, do anything, and not give myself up, how could I use this person's point of view as creative fodder? What could I create with this? How could I contribute to them in such a way that also contributes to me and makes things greater? You have to function from question with this and the willingness to be really different. I have had so many moments like this in my life. Like, one particular area that I actually wanted to talk about was parenting, because I parent. I mean, I have basically adult children now. They're 17 and 20, but they're very dynamic X-Men, and and I've had to parent them very differently because they're very different kids. They're different creatures, different people. And one of my sons, was like there was just so much. He was really struggling so much. Like they both kind of struggled when they were younger, around a lot of things that were going on, that were totally beyond my control in a lot of ways. And I really wanted to protect them. I wanted to be this like normal mom and show up and be like, okay, like nobody mess with my kids, and I want to protect them. I want to be with them. I want to like make sure nobody fucks with them, all these things. And like, but the thing is, I was giving myself up so much for that. And I was also totally disempowering them by kind of not having this point of view and this perspective that they were so capable of taking care of themselves, even as little children. And I don't mean I was going to leave them alone or leave them on the street or anything like that. But when I started to see my kids as infinite beings, I started to see them as very wise creatures with little bodies who've been around a long time. This isn't their first lifetime. And I started to look and say, like, these guys have awareness, they have choice, they are X-Men, they have a lot of awareness. X-Men have a lot of awareness about all kinds of things. And I started to see, all three of us had that. And it was like, how can I work with this? And I actually started to choose a lot of different things. And I realized, these kids chose me to be their mom for me, not for the me that I was refusing to be, that I actually was, not for the me that I was pretending to be, that wasn't me. It was like they chose me for me. So what if I show up more as me? Which meant there were things I didn't want to do as a mom. I didn't want to spend all my time with my kids. That's like a horrible thing in this reality. I really did not want to spend all my time with my kids. I didn't actually enjoy playing with them that much. Like that wasn't so much something that I really enjoyed. I didn't want to cook and clean for them. Like I really was like, there's a lot of stuff that it does not sound very fun to me here. And as long as I was functioning from judgment with it, I have to be a good mom. This is how I'm a good mom. I cook for my kids. I clean for my kids. I do their homework with them. I play with them. I was nowhere in that equation. I was nowhere in the consideration of that. And so I had to look and go, okay, they chose me for me. I need to be me or I'm going to die. Like I literally am going to wither away and like not have a very happy life. So I need to actually get really real with myself, honest with myself, and an allowance of myself as to what is true here for me. And I was like, I want to travel. I don't want to be with them all the time. I do want to be with them some of the time, but not all of the time. I don't want to cook. I don't want to clean. I don't want to drive. I don't want to do homework, So I hired somebody to do the cooking, cleaning, driving, homework. They even cooked for me, which was wonderful. I was a single mom, so it was only me in the household. And I also was like, I started to ask, like, okay, these two are very different creatures. So am I. What is it that they require? Truly, as a being, not as a person, not as this little, helpless 4-year-old, but like as a magnanimous, magnificent, huge, wise being. What does this creature require? What did they choose when they chose me? And it really was apparent to me that it was for me to thrive, for me to be happy, for me to show them what it was like to have my own back and to, create a thriving life for myself that included them. And I started to do that, and that was when their whole universe relaxed. They started to become so much more peaceful and at ease and, calm. And they used to be really, when they were really little, they were super crazy, hyper, really out of control. And a lot of it was their awareness of me constantly giving myself up for them. And our relationship was so strained because of it, because they were like, excuse me, that's not what we chose. We chose you. We chose you knowing that you're not going to be the helicopter mom that you're trying to be, that you hate being, that doesn't work for you. They were like, we would like to actually have you as a mom, energetically. The more I showed up as me and was like, okay, I need to go beyond all appropriateness, all judgment, all, like how this is supposed to look, how this is supposed to be, how I'm supposed to show up, what makes me a good mom, everybody else's judgments. I needed to go beyond all of that and go, I'm choosing for me here. And I have these children and I am committed to them. I'm also committed to me. And if they grow up with a mom who is like, yes, like you can create anything, watch me, I'm going to create anything. Sometimes it includes you, sometimes it doesn't. And it was so cool because it created such a different reality with them. And this is what I mean when I say, sometimes you have to be the leader, because they weren't going to do that. I mean, they were energetically like kicking my ass constantly to choose it. But we a lot of times have to be like, look, there's something that I know that can be different here with your boss, with your clients, with your colleagues, your peers, your friends, your whatever, your family, your parents, your siblings, your spouse, your children. And and if you have an awareness of something that's different, it might be really different. And you might not even necessarily know what it is. It might be more of an energy. But that's okay, because X-Men are energetic creatures and energy is our thing. It's our jam. It's our wheelhouse. It's where we function best and how we create best is from the non-cognitive. And but there's tools that, like there's some tools, some conversations that you can have, get your hands on, that actually really help you to step into that. And that's what I love about Access Consciousness is there's, a lot of tools that are very energetic for energetic creatures to live in an energetic way. And so, you have to be, just like have the courage to explore that. I was so lucky because I had so much pain in my body and my kids were so out of control. I was really pretty miserable in my life. I knew it was my life, my body, my children showing me, hey, idiot, you need to just be you, for fuck's sake. And I was like, oh, all right. Well, that was a lot of hard work for nothing, because we give ourselves up, we shrink our lives, and then our lives are small and boring and painful. Our relationships aren't satisfying. Like when you shrink, everything shrinks. When you grow and you expand into you and you choose more of you and you're like, I don't know how this is going to work, but I've got to move in this direction. Everything starts to expand if you are choosing what is true for you. And you're getting out of being in everybody else's universe, trying to take care of everybody, and really being a different creature that you are, doing what you came here to do, creating what you came here to create. So this is like the very beginning of an ongoing conversation that I really love to have, because I think I needed somebody to give me permission to be as different as I was, as a mom especially. Thank you, Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, who really pushed me with that conversation constantly for many years to be different as a mom, and supported me in so many amazing ways, and still does for sure in all areas of my life. But I'm so grateful because it was truly, I wouldn't have known what to do. I knew there was an impulse there. There was this longing, this deep longing to be different. I didn't even know it was a longing to be different. I was just miserable in my life. I didn't really know how to change it. I knew I should be happy. I knew I wanted to be happy, but I didn't have the conversations and the tools to open up to like, okay, I just don't want to give myself up for other people. And it can't actually really be a contribution to other people if I give myself up for them. That just isn't how the universe works. That's not how my universe works. So I need to find a different way. And I needed somebody to give me permission and a set of tools that allow me to step onto that path and start exploring it in a very different way. And I'm so glad that I did. And I continue to, 15 years later, I continue to explore it and choose things that are really uncomfortable every day, but that's okay. This is what's required. And I actually have learned to really embrace and enjoy discomfort. It is, it's a gift, it's when I'm uncomfortable, it means I'm creating and I'm stretching beyond what I currently, know. And I love actually having some of that every day. I'm kind of weird like that. So I hope this was a contribution to you. If it was, please do the things, share and subscribe and like and whatever you do, comment, I guess. And there's also so much more. There's this month, the month of June 2025, and beyond if you're listening to this way later. It's kind of like XMen month. So I'm doing a 2-day XMen class done over 2 days. Done over 4 days. That's how we do it around here. It's 2.5 hours a day on Zoom, June 13th, starting June 13th for 4 days. And then after that, I'm starting an XMen telecall called Are You a Lazy XMen or Are You an Elemental of Consciousness? And that's really going to be, you have to have taken some sort of an XMen class. If you take the 2-day class, you get a little discount, the one coming up. But that one's really an exploration of presence for XMen. What is it to be present, and how much magic can we create as a very different kind of presence that is unique to you, that is something to be discovered, and how you can use your creative superpowers and your capacities to be so present in everything that you're creating now and in the future that you become so miraculous with what it is that you're up to. That's the elemental of consciousness. The elementals of consciousness are energies that stimulate miraculousness and miraculous creation. They're like the building blocks of miraculous creation. We can be that, we can choose that. But if we're choosing to be kind of lazy, kind of not present, kind of like distracted, then we don't allow ourselves to really have the potency that we have and be. So I'm really excited for that exploration, both of them. It's going to be an awesome month of exploring, creating from your difference. And that's a world I want to live in, is way full of a lot of people that are playing with that very thing, because that makes the world a greater place in so many ways, in ways we could never imagine. So I hope this was a contribution. I will see you next time. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me for the Creation of Living podcast. If this conversation was inspiring to you, share the love. To work privately with me or for info on my upcoming classes and retreats, go to heathernichols.com. Have a beautiful day, and remember that the world thrives when you do.